Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Asif Ali Sayed from the Department of Business Administration, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. Today, we shall be discussing about the module Presentation Skills of the paper Skill Development and Social Entrepreneurship. After completing this module, the students will be able to understand the concept and relevance of skills required for making presentations and get familiar with the dimensions of presentation skills, requisite presentation planning, and preparation and delivery skills. Introduction to presentation skills. A presentation is a process of presenting a topic to an audience. Thus, it is a means of communication or speaking engagement that can be adapted to various speaking situations, such as talking to a group, addressing a meeting, or briefing a team. To be effective, step-by-step preparation and the methods and means of presenting the information should be carefully considered. Presentation skills. They are a set of abilities to convey the messages with clarity to the audience. The message will contain a persuasive element because it plays an important role in influencing the clients and customers, which is the audience. Components of an effective presentation. Practice is the only route towards excellence in making presentations. No amount of talking about talking will help. However, even the practice has to be in the right directions. Some of the components of a good presentation are content matching the audience. In a good presentation, the ideas are appropriate to the audience. If the ideas presented are too difficult or too simple, in either of the situations, the presentation is likely to fail. Similarly, it will fail if the ideas are perceived as irrelevant or boring, which makes it all the more challenging for the presentation of difficult concepts. The challenge between two sets of presentations will be entirely different from each other on the same topic. Example A, presentation on the theory of relativity will be different from a group of scientists than the one on the same topic for a group of school children. The need of the audience shall decide the contents of the presentation. The second is language matching the audience. The language used in the presentation must also match the audience. If it is too difficult, that is technical, for a non-technical audience, the presentation is likely to fail. Or if the language is insultingly simple, the audience may switch off and the mind may not be attentive or listening to the presentation. Attractive presentation also features concrete graphic language. This is the kind of colorful language that helps the audience draw pictures in the mind. The third important thing is brevity. A good presentation is brief, but how brief is brief cannot be answered. The answer depends on what's to be presented and to whom, why and under what circumstances. On the whole, it's a good idea not to exceed 12 to 15 minutes unless the presentation is interactive and the audience as keen about the topic as the presenter is. Beyond 15 minutes, it may be difficult to retain the audience's attention. Less than 7 or 8 minutes may be too short to present anything significant to a group of people. But if one is unsure, it's better to err in the direction of brevity. Let the audience ask for more rather than squirm in the seats waiting for the golden word finally. The next important aspect to be considered is smooth sequence. An effective presentation has all the ideas sequenced well. A good logical sequence is essential for the ideas to be understood easily and accepted by the audience. As we shall see that there are different but equally logical sequences, whatever is the sequence chosen, it has to be smooth. The presentation takes time. Repeat. Whatever is the sequence chosen, it has to be smooth. The presentation takes place in time, so listeners cannot go back and forth looking for connection as the reader of an article can do. Signs of preparation and mastery. A good presenter displays signs of presentation and mastery of the subject. Statistical information, illustrative cases and visual aids are some of the external signs of presentation. Smooth, confident delivery symbolizes mastery of the subject. If the audience perceive the presentation and the presenter as credible and knowledgeable about what he or she is saying, it's easier for them to lower any resistance to the idea and accept them. Any signs of casualness indicating lack of preparation can put the audience off. The listener may reject even wholesomely the idea because they don't want to be taken for granted. Lively delivery. If the presentation is good, one expects to find the presenter relaxed and confident, maintaining eye contact with the whole audience. A presenter endeavors himself to the audience. If his face is lively, voice modulated, and gestures appropriate, there is a passion in his voice born out of conviction about the message being presented. If the presenter isn't convinced, it's tough for him to sound convincing. Appropriate gestures are gestures that do not draw attention to themselves but add to the lively delivery. A good presenter's dress is such that it does not draw the attention to itself but supports the presenter's image and is appropriate to the audience and the occasion. Appropriate humor. Finally, the use of humor has to be very seriously and judiciously planned, as every presenter does not possess the gift of laughing at themselves or making their audience laugh. If there is humor in the presentation that is apt and in good taste, the audience would love and welcome it, and perhaps will buy the message. Humor has a way of disarming opposition. It can cut painlessly. If these are the qualities expected in a good presentation, it is obvious that careful planning and preparation are essential for achieving them. Number 2. Planning the presentation. A presentation is not a sequential display of data, but a battle for selling an idea, which requires a strategy or a sequence of moves. A 5-point 5W strategy could be used for the presentation preparation planning. The 5W are comprised for 4 Ws, that is who, why, where and when, to be decided to answer the 5th W, that is what. Who. The clearer and comprehensive the answer is to who, that is the receiver, the better is the chance to shape the message to suit the receiver. This comprises of several more questions like the composition and the number of people in the audience, their education level, who are the opinion leaders, the language they are comfortable, their attitude towards the idea, etc. Why? Why is the next filter? Why are you making the presentation? This helps in shaping the presentation. There can be 2 agendas. First, the open agenda or the public purpose of your presentation, while the second agenda, that is the hidden agenda, is the reason to challenge their belief or to explore their objective or take home from your presentation, or the reason they are there for. Planning. Planning usually includes the following questions. Who is your audience? Why are they there? What is your goal? How long will it be? Where will it take place? The next W is where. It is related to the physical setting of venue of the presentation, the place, infrastructure, equipment, and familiarity with them. These should be clear, and if possible, a rehearsal followed by a backup plan must be in place to handle any eventuality. When? This filter is related to the time of presentation or the sequence in case your presentation happens to be one of the several consecutive ones or scheduled at the end of the day. The strategy to use should be lively and humorous. In case you are running behind schedule, you should plan such that you can shrink the presentation in half the allotted time without panicking or even being able to expand it if required. The next W is what. What is added to contents of the presentation only when it has passed the other 4 filter levels. What would interest the audience and what is the level of detailing required? A better and safer rule is to give less rather than more. Although researching the topic should be giving us enough depth of idea not only to make the presentation but also to answer a variety of questions related to the topic. If making a presentation in PowerPoint, a code red for core ideas should be incorporated which have to be presented. Green should be earmarked for those ideas which may be presented in case time permits, else could be dropped to cut the presentation short, and the rest ought to be presented with the core in the event of the presentation going along expected lines. Multiple presentations may also be created as a backup towards time constraints. Structuring the presentation. The structure of a presentation is a sequence of ideas for keeping the listener attentive without straining themselves. A common rule for any presentation should be introduction, body, and conclusion. Introduction. It is the most important multi-purpose component of the presentation. The introduction must try to inform the audience what the presentation will tell them. It should arouse the audience's interest, establish rapport with them, motivate them, and make the body of your presentation easy to understand and accept. Depending on the general style, kind of audience, and the purpose of presentation, a presentation can be started with a statement of a relevant problem, a summary statement of the structure, a definition of the purpose of presentation, a description of the topic's importance to the audience, a piece of statistical information presented memorably, or a startling statement or a rhetorical question. A brief preview of the structure and purpose may be an excellent introduction to a technical presentation. The introduction is a preview of the presentation, the object being to tell the audience what you intend to present to them. Coming down to the body. The body is the main course of the presentation, so it requires further planning. Two specific questions can define it. First, the content, and secondly, the order they appear in. Also, the sequence of ideas should be based on the identified answers to who is important. Sometimes a top-down approach works, while at other times a bottom-up approach is more acceptable in sequencing of information in the body of presentation. Conclusion. It is telling the audience what you have told them in the body. It is as important as the introduction and thus has to be planned and delivered well. Of the different ways of executing this part, one may summarize the presentation while a searching question is asked, or a quote or call for action may be appropriate for the other type of presentation closes. A few don'ts to be avoided are abrupt ending because of paucity of time or a long winding conclusion. These risks the audience's mind from wandering away and the entire effort is lost. Presentation delivery. Presentation delivery is about deciding on how to tell your audience after deciding on what to tell them. Poor delivery can spoil the entire presentation, so it needs to be carefully crafted. Reading aloud the entire presentation would end up with just reproducing of the text but losing the audience. The technique can be reading out with eye contact and voice modulation. Towards that end, familiarity with the text and practice is important. Also remember that the page to read from should be printed in double spacing and font 14, so it can assist you in the delivery. Also type each line in a breadth group of words, helping you to scoop up the whole line in one go and speak from your short-term memory while looking at the audience. Speaking from notes. In case of short presentations, transparency or slides can act as mental notes. They should be brief and act merely as triggers for your ideas. Consulting from notes frequently risks the audience's impression about the credibility of your knowledge. Handling questions. Handling question is a part of lively interaction with the audience. By asking questions, they give verbal feedback, giving you a chance to clarify things, to correct any misunderstandings, and to give them additional supporting data. Questions are also a double-edged sword. Failing to answer legitimate questions can dent the credibility of the presenter's image as incompetent. Handling a question is an art. Start with preparation for anticipating questions, having answers ready. Hostile questions can best be handled with humor. If cornered, get out of the trap by taking another question. Else, an escape strategy would be to answer it after the presentation, supplementing it with data and illustrations. Avoid getting into a one-to-one dialogue. Rephrase a long winding question into a crisp one for seeking clarity. Also, observing others handling questions is learning how to and how not to deal with questions in a presentation session. Voice, posture and gesture. Voice should be loud enough and well modulated as in an animated conversation. There must be passion and self-believability in what is being presented. Thus, conviction could come through the voice. Avoid stiffness as it symbolizes nervousness. Rather than clutching the lectern, a relaxed, confident and controlled posture is required to deliver a powerful message. Be careful about your hands. They speak your mind, so avoid them making any wild, repetitive or distracting gestures. Eye contact. Looking at people as you talk to them is the most natural and fundamental fact of the social life. It shows your interest in them, it involves them and brings you feedback. As you feel you are communicating with them, it also indicates your self-confidence. So try looking at everyone in the audience rather than singling out anyone in particular. It is important to see audience's eyes to lock in and make the communication effective. Appropriate clothes. Attire plays an important role in the overall impression created by the presenter. One should dress such that clothes do not become the center of self-attention or that of the audience. In case of inappropriate dress, which is too casual or gaudy, it would distract the audience. Being overcautious about the dress would distract the presenter away from the presentation. Being your natural self in appearance and voice would be easier and more effective for making an emphatic presentation. Supporting presentations visually. Spoken words have a very short shelf life in the audience's memory, so the idea have to reinforce graphically. Visual aids assist in reinforcing the presentation. The use of charts, whiteboard or overhead projector or the computer and multimedia play a vital role in supporting presentations visually. Body language. Human body and its various parts play an important role in communication. Non-verbal communication play a more effective role than verbal communication, as our body movements, gestures, postures, etc. are expressions of our thoughts and feelings. These are signals our body sends out to communicate. Also, our body consciously as well as unconsciously conveys messages, attitudes, moods, status, relationship, etc. Kinesics. Kinesics is the language of movement of different body parts like head, face, eye contact, gestures, communicating different messages. Holding the head high is a sign of confidence and interest in the person in front of us. But if the head is drawn far backward, it symbolizes arrogance or pride. Head jerks indicates rejection, while nodding the head signifies importance given while listening to a speaker. Within kinesics, we have different aspects, which are first the face. Face is said to be the index of the mind. It is important to exercise restraint and control our negative feelings while adopting a positive attitude to all situations, else our feelings are easily given away by our expressions. So staying calm and relaxed helps. Second in kinetics is eye contact. Now, eye contact expresses understanding and conveying the messages with feelings and interests. All feelings can be communicated by eyes. A long gaze, which is fixed, shows an interest in something or somebody, while avoiding eye contact indicates nervousness or embarrassment or even being untruthful. Gestures made by movement of our legs, arms, hands and torso also communicate non-verbally meanings. Example, arms spread convey the meaning wide, while shuffling from one leg to another symbolizes nervousness, and a torso erect and extended is interpreted as intense. Body shape and posture affects the way we think about ourselves and how we relate to others. Leaning forward or backward, standing or sitting erect, stretching or bending sideways, all these make an immediate impression in the other person's mind. We can always try to be graceful and confident without unnecessarily showing off or appearing unduly self-conscious and minding our body talk. Proxemics. The study of spatial factors between sender and the receiver of the message is called as proxemics. It is classified into different types of space. Public space is a distance of more than 12 feet for formal communication, while social space is a distance ranging between 4 to 12 feet for formal business communication. Personal space is a gap of 2 to 4 feet reserved for casual or friendly communication. Intimate space is the space between the communicator and the sender being less than 2 feet, indicating closeness and possibility of physical contact, a handshake or touch. Vocalics. This involves paralanguage. While verbal language consists of what or the contents of the word, paralanguage involves the how of the speaker's voice or the way in which it is spoken. There are different kinds of voice: clear, cultivated, pleasant. It is the medium used to convey the message via a language. Beyond clarity, for effective communication there are certain elements to be considered, like pitch variation, for keeping the listener interested rather than making a speech monotonous. Speaking speed. Varying message delivery at different speed conveys different parts of a message. A highly intricate or technical part of information must be delivered at a slower speed for it to be productive. Pause must be used effectively to emphasize the upcoming subject and gaining listeners' attention, while too frequent pauses spoils the speech. Volume variation. The loudness must be adjusted to the size of the audience, but volume must be monitored to bring about a contrast, as this adds life to the speech. Non-fluencies. Utterance like oh, ah, you know are non-fluencies. Their careful and judicious use adds to fluency, while too frequent use irritates the listener. Summary. Let us summarize what we have learned. Presentation is a speaking engagement process. While presentation skills are a set of abilities to convey the messages effectively and efficiently, the key elements for creating a presentation include target audience awareness, enabling in better understanding the character of audience and in customizing the message accordingly. This is followed by planning of what to present based on who, why, where and when filters. Finally, presentation would be structured into introduction, body and a conclusion. In ending the presentation, by repeating the core points again, effective presentation delivery should be aided with supporting visual aids and a positive body language. Repetitive practice is the key to reducing nervousness and enables to spot and eliminate errors in presenting. Thank you.